Hello, everybody. My name is Elisa Baum, and I am Precona's Director of Product Marketing. We'll begin in just a moment, but first I'd like to take a second to conduct a little bit of house cleaning. First, if you would please raise your hand using the hand icon located in the GoToWebinar control panel to let me know you hear me, that would be very much appreciated. Great. Thank you very much, everybody. I see your hands. Next, during this webinar, you will be on mute. Should you have any questions during the discussion, please enter them in the questions field within the GoToWebinar control panel. At the end of the webinar, we will take time to answer as many questions as possible, and those that aren't addressed will be answered in a follow-up blog post entry on Precona's MySQL Performance blog. In addition, a recording of this webinar and access to the slides will be made available to everybody within 48 hours. With that said, I'd like to thank you for attending today's webinar, Precona Server 5.6, Enterprise Grade MySQL, presented by Precona's Director of Server Development, Stuart Smith. With that said, I'd like to turn the floor over to Stuart. Stuart, you have the floor.
Thank you. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night, depending where in the world you are. It's good morning here for me. So welcome. I'm here to talk about Precona Server 5.6. Hopefully you can hear me well on everything here and visually see anything. Don't worry if the window's small or anything. You should be able to resize it now if someone asks a question there, or there should be a big full screen button for you. Plus I use really big font, so that's really going to help along the way. As mentioned, questions, have them flood in, please do. We've already had a couple, and it's only a minute in. So I'll address those as we go on at the end. At the end is the best time we can cover things. So ask anything you want, and I'll attempt to get an answer. Everything from Precona Server 5.6 related things down to, where's the best place to get coffee. I can help answering those. Cool. So feel free anytime. Lots of questions are always good. So before we jump into Precona Server 5.6 specifics, let's take a look at what Precona Server is. And after all, there has been Precona Server 5.0, 5.1, and 5.5. So we've actually been producing Precona Server for a good number of years now. And if I do say so myself, we're getting quite good at it. So an important thing to cover is that Precona Server is based on Oracle MySQL. I'm not going to cover Oracle MySQL specific things here. I'm not going to talk about all the features and performance improvements of Oracle MySQL 5.6. I'm going to let somebody else do that at a different date. There's already talks up there online. There's a whole bunch of documents up there on Precona.com as well. So I'm not going to cover Oracle MySQL 5.6 specific things. What I'm going to talk about in this session is Precona Server. It's Precona Server 5.6, right? Precona Server specific things. So I want to make the point that Precona Server is not a fork. It's not a fork of MySQL differing for the sake of differing. It's much more sort of a branch, if you want to use the technical term for it, or you can use one of based on MySQL, right? So Precona Server is based on Oracle MySQL. If you think about Precona Server, it's basically MySQL community plus added features plus bug fixes, right? Plus performance improvements. We're based on MySQL community because we're GPL licensed, so the entirety of Precona Server is free and open source software. So all licensed under the GPL. It has added features on top of MySQL community, such as those only found in MySQL Enterprise. All of our code's open source. MySQL Enterprise, of course, is not all open source. The community edition is. We base on that. We have a bunch of additional bug fixes. I just did a quick count as of at least 16 hours ago. I haven't looked what's happened overnight for me. There was 41 different bug fixes in Precona Server 5.6 that we had before upstream Oracle MySQL did. And if you, that's including into the development releases. So during the development of Precona Server 5.6, we've had bugs fixed in Precona Server 5.6 before the fixes were available in Oracle MySQL. And if you look at that currently, we have about 35 bug fixes are currently only in Precona Server 5.6 and not in Oracle MySQL 5.6 yet. So we've actually got a pretty good track record there, and you can actually go into Precona Server 5.5 and even 5.1 documentation. There's less a table of bug fixes that we have in Percona Server that are not in Oracle MySQL yet. So you can actually go and look at that back to 5.5 and 5.1 as well. We also talk about here performance enhancements. After all, we want to make existing things faster. Cool. So let's talk about Percona Server 5.1. Cool. So Percona Server 5.1 was all about performance and management improvements. Percona Server 5.1 has been out for a long time now, so it can very much be considered a stable and mature database server. And this is what people who are running 5.1 still seem to find, is that 5.1 is very stable, reliable, very predictable, and it's a very well-known quantity. And this can be an important thing for some production environments. Percona Server 5.1 very much set a standard for MySQL performance and manageability. It very much led the field in MySQL performance and was definitely the inspiration for a lot of performance improvements by other people, and indeed, set new bars for challenges to be met. And there's a long history of sort of benchmarks. So there's actual data as well as the theoretical stuff that developers talk about when we talk about performance improvements going in for Percona Server 5.1. There was very much a focus on throughput, so overall throughput, as well as performance stability. Percona has had a good track record of having a focus on the stability of performance. So this means that if you say X number of transactions per second or X number of transactions per minute, that number is stable over time. And it's not, for example, at 1,000 for 10 seconds, then dips down to 100. We don't want that. One of our aims is to make sure that those kind of things don't occur and that you can always rely on consistent performance from the database server. Another big focus in 5.1 was started to diagnostics to be able to find out what's going on inside the server. And Percona Server 5.1 really started to lead the MySQL industry in diagnostics of what was going on inside the database server. We had a good long time where Percona Server 5.1 is actually outperforming MySQL 5.5. So really early on, even starting benchmarking Percona Server 5.1, was outperforming MySQL 5.5 when 5.5 came around. A common question I get here is how long will we support 5.1? There is undoubtedly a good number of people still running 5.1 in production. And one question that I get asked fairly often is how long are we going to support 5.1 for? Now, I cannot speak for Oracle support timeline. Oracle have their own documents on how long they're going to support MySQL 5.1. I can tell you, however, that Percona plans to support 5.1 as long as there's continued customer demand. And this is really something that drives our business. It's based on customer demand and requirements. So as long as there's demand for 5.1 support, it'll still be getting updates. So people on support contracts can still get bug fixes into 5.1. So even though today's all about 5.6, 5.1 is still a thing that exists and people rely on. And some people are in fact going from 5.1 to 5.6, even skipping 5.5 pretty much. My advice is if you're on 5.1 now, plan transition and go there. We have a very good working knowledge of 5.1 to 5.5 upgrades, and of course going 5.5 to 5.6 upgrades. So this is all fresh in people's brains. Real knowledge is out there. All the things that you need to look out for and focus on. So this is all something that's good current knowledge. And that's always a good time to sort of plan migrations rather than many years down the track when it starts to get a bit rusty. Just for example, going from 3.23 upwards now is a trickier thing than it was a number of years ago. So definitely if you're on 5.1, have a look at going forward, and that should be good for you. Percona Server 5.5 very much continued with the traditions of 5.1, naturally with all the benefits of MySQL 5.5. So there's a lot of performance improvements inside MySQL 5.5, which also came into Percona Server 5.5. And since over the lifetime of Percona Server 5.5, we've again made lots of feature and performance improvements as well as bug fixes, to the point now where the chief competition for performance for Percona Server 5.5 is actually Percona Server 5.6, and this is a double-edged sword because of course the chief competitor for performance on Percona Server 5.6 is our own stable release, which is bracing when you're doing benchmarks during development. So I will also say that 5.5 is a very stable, reliable, and performant RDBMS. It's trusted by many big names in the internet industry in production environments. And we've even had benchmarks where we've had to go and make Percona Server 5.6 faster so that it matches the new performance improvements we've made in Percona Server 5.5. So there's actually been some really good sort of leading performance improvements in Percona Server 5.5. And the same thing occurs for MySQL 5.5. Percona Server 5.5 has had clear advantages for a good amount of time. So what is Percona Server 5.6 all about? Pretty much I could say more of the same, which is the most non-thrilling tagline ever. But the benefits of that is that it is more bug fixes, more features that come to Percona Server first, as well as a high level of performance. And also what you can consider is that throughout its lifetime, Percona Server 5.6 will get the same amount of attention and growth as 5.1 and 5.5 had. So that is, added features as needed that don't disrupt existing users, more ability to get insights in the database server, as well as a high level of performance. So we're seeing that 5.6 is going to sort of mirror, the story of 5.5 and 5.1 over their life cycles as well. The advantage of 5.6, of course, is that it is, of course, based on MySQL 5.6. I get asked a lot what my opinion on MySQL 5.6 is. I would say it's the best MySQL release yet, and that's sort of an honest opinion. If you look at every new stable release of MySQL over the years, 5.6 is the clear winner of when it's actually released as GA, the highest quality and highest performing MySQL release yet. And this is why we base Percona Server 5.6 on it. MySQL 5.6 is a good solid base to start off. Believe it or not, just before we started broadcasting, I got a question of what is my thoughts on MySQL 5.6 considering Stewart's .20 rule. For those not familiar with it, Stewart's .20 rule is the marketing person's nightmare of all software will annoy you to some degree until it reaches a point release of .20. So, like Linux 2.6 was annoying until 2.6.20. MySQL 5.0 was definitely annoying until 5.0.20. 5.1 similarly, and what about 5.6? So 5.6 is now at about 5.6.13, the Oracle one. And it's one of the least annoying point releases there. The code coming out of Oracle is actually fairly high quality. When you're migrating sort of large environments, there's always things you can notice and get hit and the like, especially the large changes in there. MySQL 5.6 is actually a really solid base, so it may sort of bend the .20 rule a bit. .20 rule is always a guideline. That's from the ultra-conservative, should I ever upgrade view of that rule. But still, MySQL 5.6, best release ever. So if we look at the code that's emerged, and that's what I do, I will actually go look in the code, source code of what's going into MySQL 5.6. It's actually a decent quality code. There's been a lot of care about what's gone in there. And I will say that the team at Oracle has fixed many problems in MySQL development that have been brought over from the Sun and MySQL AD days. So the quality of the code coming out is higher than it has been before, as well as the level of bug fixing that has gone on before release. The Oracle guys have actually done a lot of good work in fixing up software development methodologies in the MySQL team and making sure that higher quality software leaves and features that are half-baked don't make it into release. Very much more about only shipping code that is complete. And that's absolutely wonderful to see. Not just hear that commitment, but see it in the code. And that's what we're thrilled about. So, MySQL 5.6 could also say, excuse my pet bird is deciding to sing to everyone. Okay, so let's look at 5.6. 5.6 is inspired by Percona Server, I say. There are a lot of things in MySQL 5.6 that were inspired by features in Percona Server 5.1 and 5.5. So you can actually look back through the history of Percona Server and see that Percona Server 5.5, you got a lot of features that ended up making it into MySQL 5.6 before MySQL 5.6 was out. So we really led the industry there. We'll go through a few of them now. So there's crash-resistant replication. Much more reliable and crash-resilient replication was first in Percona Server. In Percona Server 5.6, we take the Oracle implementation. Remember how I said that we don't differ for the sake of differing? We're very much a value add on top of Oracle MySQL rather than a fork. So we don't fork for the sake of forking or just to be different here. We take the Oracle implementation of crash-resistant replication. And this is a feature that they've very much got inspiration from Percona's implementation. There's a lot of InnoDB scalability work and I/O scalability work inside there that may no longer be relevant. So we're very much sort of evaluating every change we've made inside InnoDB and see if things need to be reworked where they still have the same effects. And we're going to make new improvements to InnoDB scalability, as especially in some of the fundamental changes that have occurred inside MySQL 5.6. It means that there's new opportunities to increase InnoDB performance. And indeed, that's what actually we've been doing. We have some pretty exciting stuff for performance improvements that have come out in the past few months, and a few things that are work in progress on 5.6 specific that we're just trying to nut out the last performance numbers of and the like. Of course, when you make any changes to scalability of software, you really want to test that, not just for reliability, but for how does this perform in a bunch of different situations. So we're very much into doing that before throwing things out to the world. A feature that is in MySQL 5.6 that first in Percona Server was InnoDB data dictionary memory usage limits. So this could limit how much memory the InnoDB data dictionary used. And this could help people with a large number of InnoDB tables. So if you had like tens of thousands of tables or above, by using a feature in Percona Server, and now there's a similar one inside 5.6, you could limit how much memory that would use. And so the 5.6 feature is a little bit different than what we had in 5.5, but it's actually something that can be useful to some people, and is again led by Percona. In Percona Server, you could also access the InnoDB data dictionary inside information schema. This was first in Percona Server. So we've taken the Oracle implementation here, basically near identical from a user point of view. There was no reason in differing anymore already. Persistent table and index statistics. So on table open, InnoDB does index dives, which is essentially 8 random IOs to compute statistics on indexes in order to help the MySQL optimizer make decisions about how to execute queries. With many tables, many indexes, and a limited number of table open cache, this can have a considerable impact on table open time and hence performance of the database server. So in Percona Server, we had the option to have persistent index statistics, which meant you would do one I/O to read these statistics off disk rather than have to do many to compute them each time. And this is now a feature that's in MySQL 5.6 as well, again where we led. There's dump and restore InnoDB buffer pool was also there. This greatly improves server restart time. So Percona has long found that one of the neglected things in database server performance was the amount of time it takes to restart the database server. A long time ago now, we implemented stuff to be able to say how long crash recovery took and what stages of crash recovery took. And this is very much a tool used by both us and, before it was Oracle, to improve how long InnoDB crash recovery took. And so this was very much leading the field and saying performance at runtime is not the only thing that's important. What's also important is stuff around when the database server is running. So if you crash and you're restarting, if it's going to take 3 days to do crash recovery, that's usually not on in most people's environments. So we managed to very much spur on performance improvements on restore time. The other part of this is what we refer to as warm-up time. So if you restart the database server, that means you're starting with a cold cache. So the InnoDB buffer pool would be empty. Percona's patch is really simple. It goes through and you can periodically save out a list of all the pages that are in the buffer pool. On database server startup, it reads these pages back in. So you have much reduced warm-up time. So typically people have done workarounds where it's like throw a whole bunch of SQL queries the database server before you re-add it into production to warm up the cache, and that can take hours. With buffer pull, dump, and restore, this can mean 10 minutes rather than a couple of hours. So in Percona Server 5.6, we use the MySQL 5.6 implementation, which is slightly different than what we've had, but we're not going to differ for difference sake. Again, Percona led. So MySQL 5.6, best MySQL yet, inspired by Percona Server features. And I will say Percona Server 5.6 is even better. So it's actually built on top of all the good things you get with MySQL 5.6, and we add our own patches and features and bug fixes to make that a good thing to run. So all the goodies from MySQL 5.6, right? So, and I'm not going to cover them here. Percona Server 5.6, the big important thing is it's free and open source replacements for MySQL Enterprise only features. Right? So there's some things that you only get with MySQL Enterprise, which is in the Community Edition, which is Oracle's allowed to do that. They have the copyright there. And this is not a thing that Oracle started doing at all. This is something that was planned from the MySQL days, if you remember back to MySQL user conferences a number of years ago. So this isn't sort of some new thing for Oracle at all. Percona Server 5.6, free and open source replacements for MySQL Enterprise-only features. So there's things you can do with Percona Server 5.6 that you'd otherwise have to pay for and not get the source to. So one important thing there is PAM authentication plugin. So there's PAM is pluggable authentication modules, and this is the standard for Linux and Unix authentication. So it's proprietary in MySQL Enterprise. It's free and open source. Comes for nothing with Percona Server 5.6. This lets you have users that are authenticated via PAM. So this lets you have a much more pluggable authentication, system to MySQL. And it's important to differentiate between authentication and authorization. This is PAM authentication. That's what the plugin interface in MySQL is. And this lets you do things like link up to system users or out of etc. password. You can authenticate via LDAP. You could authenticate via anything you can plug PAM into, which is pretty much anything. There's even been the example that Vadim posted on MySQL performance blog within the last several months of being able to use the two-factor authentication app, like the Google two-factor authentication app, on your phone to do two-factor authentication to the MySQL server. So you can actually start to do two-factor authentication and different levels of authentication to Percona Server 5.6. So that's free and open source in Percona Server. Documentation's all up there, sources as well. Amazingly enough, it actually ends up having a couple of features extra on top of the MySQL Enterprise one, so you actually even get more, which is lovely. There's also the thread pool plugin. So typical MySQL servers, the model has been for a long time now that the server spawns one thread per client connection. So for each TCP connection to the database server, the MySQL server will spawn a new thread, and it runs the thread in there, right? So it takes locks where needed, and then it has to do context switch into a different thread if it becomes not runnable to run something else. And this is a long-standing architecture thing inside MySQL, and the only real time you saw any different was in the now-defunct MySQL 6.0 that never made a release, or in some forks such as Drizzle. We also have that. So the thread pool plugin sets a limit to the number of threads that the database server can spawn, but the other thing it does is it allows each of those threads to run multiple connections. So when one connection has to wait for something, it can go and run another connection. So this can give a decent performance boost on some workloads, right? When you're having a low number of concurrent threads, it doesn't have too much of an effect. When you start to have a lot, then it can have a much bigger effect in stability of performance. And you can argue that this is almost a workaround for some deficiencies inside MySQL. That being said, it does help a lot of some workloads, and so thread pool plugin in Percona Server, free and open source software, proprietary in MySQL Enterprise. So with our implementation there, so the implementation inside Percona Server, you can actually go and look at the source code there. We can properly support it, modify it, fix any problems, etc., and do that. It's also an interesting thing to benchmark against. Something we've got work in progress on Percona Server 5.6 performance is we've actually fixed some of the fundamental bottlenecks that happen when you don't have thread pool enabled that are possibly going to even make enabling thread pool redundant and not give you any boost. That's very much work in progress, and we're hoping to have something to show soon. So there's actually some interesting work going on sort of fixing some fundamental bottlenecks inside MySQL and InnoDB that have a huge impact for people with high concurrency workloads. Another important thing in Percona Server 5.6 is user index and table statistics. And this is best to say it's simple monitoring, right? So performance schema is all well and good. It's been around for a little while now in the MySQL world. I'd say with performance schema, if you have deep insights into the workings of MySQL Server, you can use performance schema to get deep insights into the workings of the MySQL Server, which is great if you have deep knowledge of MySQL Server. The user index and table statistics feature inside Percona Server lets you get pretty deep insights without any pain, right? It's really simple to enable, really simple to use, and lets you very quickly find out what your application is doing and where you can go and look to improve things. So it's very much simple, easy, no fuss, very easy to explain. This is something that's in Percona Server that is, again, in 5.6 that helps you produce better performing apps. Performance schema is, of course, still there. So we have performance schema in Percona Server 5.6, which is all the improvements of the 5.6-based performance schema. So you can actually go down and drill very deeply into performance schema if you want as well. But we also want to ensure that you can get to the most bang for buck as simply as possible. So that's a very important thing for us here, is to also be able to have ease of use for a bunch of these features to find out what's going on. With the extended slow query log in Percona Server, it's very, very flexible. So you can get an immense amount of detail of what went on for each query. It's a common profiling thing to turn this on for a little while and then see what comes out. You can use tools such as PT Query Digest. So with Percona Server, it's not just Percona Server itself; it's all the tooling surrounding it, right? So there's Percona Toolkit, which has some great tools for examining MySQL log files and database servers. One of those is examining the slow query log, and especially when it comes out of Percona Server, you can add in different amounts of insights there. So what locks were taken, what InnoDB locks were taken during queries. You can go and examine that and run that over time and say, what's my top number of executed queries, and work on fixing that. You'd be surprised how many simple, repetitive queries are in just about every web app. We've actually turned this on a bunch of our own tools. So our own server-side tools will turn on slow query log, run PT Query Digest, and still find problems where it's like you don't need to execute the same query 100 times and stuff like that. And you can actually cache things and find very low-hanging fruit very easily. With extended slow query log, you can also plug that into Percona Playback, and so you can replay your database, captured database load against other servers, effectively creating your own benchmark. There's naturally, conditions apply when it comes to something like that, capturing and replaying database server loads. It's by its nature highly concurrent. There's interesting things you can pretty much only do with Percona Server and the implementation of the slow query log there. Sidetrack Playback will also do it from TCP dump, so you can actually TCP dump your network traffic and run stuff back. There is also a bunch of really good features for those involved with database as a service. And I say database as a service, not meaning it's not just for cloud operators. So it's not just if you're running a public cloud infrastructure. It's also if, for example, you're part of the group that provides database service to other parts of the organization. So you're not in control of writing the app, and you can't necessarily go and hit developers' fingers too hard with a stick when they do bad things. So there's features inside Percona Server that help you ensure that applications are slightly better behaved. So there's things like utility user, so it means you can actually have a user you can always log into the database server as, so it's like hidden, so you can give application developers super, so that you can give them the root account. You can have this utility user to do something like recover their password or reset a password without it being a big ordeal. So there's a utility user, which is very useful if you're running as a service and give out root access to the database server. There's also features like enforce storage engine. So this very much forces people to use InnoDB and makes it harder to use MyISAM. As anyone who's ever been a DBA know, or ever had to involved in a machine that's crashed, long MyISAM table check times is about the most fun thing since a cheese grater to the knuckles. And so you definitely don't want that, and this allows you to sort of force that on people, which is a great thing to do. There's also other features in there that have proven useful to people running it as a service, and even things like table and index and user statistics, as we're talking about simple performance monitoring. This has proven immensely useful to people also offering sort of database as a service, when they're not in charge of the app, but they're in charge of the database server, of being able to find out which apps are being, are misbehaving. So which ones are actually, throwing undue load on the server, and they can either, go and wreck the knuckles of the developers that are doing bad things, or go to them and say, it's your app running these queries that is having a huge impact on performance. You want to fix that, and stuff like that. So there's actually really useful features here for production and operations that are inside Percona Server. So let's talk about ExtraDB. So ExtraDB is Percona's improved InnoDB. The big splash when ExtraDB was announced was improved performance. So it originally it in performance. Now ExtraDB in 5.6 is leading in performance and features. So I'm going to talk about some in-work internal numbers. So we've been running internal numbers on sort of the latest 5.6 trees, which you can go and get off Launchpad if you're interested in, and some latest proposed improvements to 5.6 that we have that we're trying to get final performance numbers on. Naturally, we don't want to merge any regressions or anything, so we're getting a full picture of it. And as I mentioned before, Percona Server 5.6 chief competition for performance is actually Percona Server 5.5. So there's been a good amount of benchmarks show that we can get, Percona Server, faster than MySQL. Getting it faster than Percona Server is a whole other game. So we've got some pretty impressive performance coming up for ExtraDB as well. But a big thing I want to talk about is additions we've made to ExtraDB and Percona Server 5.6 that make it a really compelling argument to run. So we have a feature called kill idle transactions. So some of you may have the unfortunate privilege of having long-running idle transactions in InnoDB that causes purge to block, and of course increases the amount of space used by the undo log. So kill idle transactions does exactly what you think it does, right? You can look at idle transactions that are holding up resources inside InnoDB and kill them. So it means if some application just kept a connection open for the sake of keeping a connection open, and it has a transaction open that's blocking purge, and that's just letting disk space be increased in the undo log, then kill idle transactions go and kill that. And that's an ExtraDB only feature that's really useful for operations and productions environments. There's also InnoDB fake changes. This can be used along with other tools to help keep slaves warm. So it can actually be used in conjunction with some other tools to keep pages that can be modified by a replication slave thread inside the buffer pool, and it's increasing replication performance as well. That's fairly exciting. It does require some extra tooling around it, so it's not as just simple to use as kill idle transactions. But InnoDB fake changes can be really powerful in high-power production environments. Next thing I want to talk about is ExtraDB and Percona Extra Backup. So one of the things we're very keen on is backup and recovery. Percona is about the experts in InnoDB disaster recovery, which is when you didn't have a backup and you're trying to rescue rows out of a database server that's very broken. That being said, we don't want you to ever get to that stage. It's great for a consulting business. It's an expert tooling and a bunch of hands-on work. So by all means, don't back up if you really want to engage a lot of data recovery stuff. But really, recommendation is have a good backup strategy and use reliable backup tools. And so with Percona Server 5.6 and latest Extra Backup, we have some good features in there that work together hand in hand to improve the ability to do backups and restore. So Percona Extra Backup is, of course, free and open source software. So the source code is all there. It's not proprietary at all. You can go and use it right now. And you get out of the most of both of them when used together. So Extra Backup is an online backup tool for MySQL. So it knows how to back up InnoDB table spaces without blocking writes. And it can also do, as lockless as possible, backup for MyISAM tables, which is, of course, the MySQL system database and any other storage engines you have there. So it can do that as well, and it's all free and open source software, and you should use it no matter what MySQL variant you use. Definitely have a look at Extra Backup to be able to solve your backup problems. So in 5.6, we have improved incremental backup. So with the latest Percona server and latest Extra Backup, we have improved ways to do incremental backups. So Extra Backup originally did full backups, right? So you basically took a backup of everything or nothing. Don't back up nothing. Back up everything. Trust me. So we want to improve incremental stuff. Let's have a look first at how the traditional incremental backup is performed. So the slow incremental backup, or the traditional way of doing incremental backup, means you scan every page inside an InnoDB table space. So this means, of course, this is all Extra Backup code. So this is all just an Extra Backup, no server changes. So against any MySQL server, if you had 100 gigabytes of InnoDB tables, this means it would scan every single page in that 100 gigabyte table space. So if you're following at home, that's 100 gigabytes of read I/O, which is a lot of I/O no matter which way you look at it. And if you had a terabyte, it would scan a terabyte. So it would look at each individual page and then look at the LSN, so the log serial number of that page, and work out if it needed to be copied into the incremental backup or not. So this is the way to do it, and it does incremental backups, and that is, of course, accurate and runs against existing servers. So one of the things that our research showed when we looked at incremental backups and where time was going, our research showed that the time to backup is dependent on the amount of data changed, right? So if you're doing an incremental backup, it takes longer, the more data you've changed. But we saw an interesting thing for incremental backup when you're doing this full scan. So for a full scan incremental, the worst case for an incremental backup was about 70% of the time it takes to do a full backup, which is a lot, right? So that means if it took 100 minutes to do a full backup, the worst case for an incremental would be about 70 minutes. So 100 minutes, 70 minutes, 70% of the time. There was an odd thing where the performance of incremental backup, the best case was actually when the majority of data had changed. So when you change the absolute majority of data in your database server. So if you had 100 gigabyte table space, you changed 90 gigabytes of data. Then it took just about 45 to 60% of the full backup time, which is kind of odd. So we noticed there was a bunch of different weird overhead going on. And this is basically just some implementation specifics of how you must implement that. But we've now got sort of an improved incremental backup. So this is Percona server working with Percona Extra Backup 2.1. So this is the change page tracking feature in Percona server. It's one simple option to enable, and there's a little bit of stuff going on there. Change track InnoDB track change pages, I believe is the server option. You enable that, and basically what it does, it builds an index, a very lightweight index of what pages have changed and when, so that Percona Extra Backup doesn't have to do a scan of every single page in the table space. So this is a way to reduce the amount of I/O run to do an incremental backup. So as an impact of what this is, if you change 1% of data, which is fairly typical, right? So between incremental backups, generally you don't change every single row in your database. You change a small amount of data in the database. So in our benchmarks, if you change 1% of data, it takes about, instead of having 70% of full backup time, it goes down to about 10 to 20%. So this could take a backup that would previously take 70 minutes down to like 10 to 20 minutes. The worst case is about the majority of data changed, and that could be like a 40 to 50% of full backup time, depending on how much data you've changed. But yeah, this is a huge improvement in performance of taking incremental backups, which means it's actually conceivable to take much more frequent incremental backups as they take a lot less time. So it's actually fairly exciting. There's more numbers and details in Lorenas's presentation from Percona Live in April. Percona Live conferences, MySQL conferences in general, are a great place to go to learn about new things going on and techniques, and you get people coming along and doing sort of great benchmarks on things like Lorenas did for April. So that's really exciting if you want details on that. So, what is the performance impact of improved incremental backup? Naturally, nothing is free. If you're going to run new code and create sort of a new index, which is probably the scary word for people, does this have any impact? We tried really hard to measure the impact of the bitmap-based backup, so the improved incremental backup you can now do with Percona Server and Percona Extra Backup. So we tried really hard to measure it. It turns out that it's completely lost in the noise. The overhead is effectively zero. It wasn't even a change we could actually see in the line. It's pretty much way less than the noise between different benchmark runs. So that's actually fairly neat. You essentially get this feature for free. And we've designed it and coded it in a way that it's very non-intrusive to the rest of the database server, runs independently, and it's a great little bit of code there. So better incremental backup is something really quite thrilling. We have another solution for incremental backup in the works as well, and this is log archiving. So this is exactly how Oracle implements it, as in you archive off the redo log and replay this on another server. And this is not a replacement for any existing implementation, of course. It's something as well. So you'll now have 3 different ways. You currently have 2, so you'll have 3 different ways of doing incremental backup, depending on what server you're running. The faster ones will only work for Percona Server, and what your requirements are. So all about choice. Cool. So Percona Server 5.6, I should also mention, is being delivered with world-class software engineering practices. So we've spent a lot of time and effort to get the most advanced continuous integration, continuous testing, and packaging infrastructure to help ensure high-quality software. So we're very much keen. I could talk for an hour on this. I have previously, on the way we produce software. We spent a lot of time perfecting the way we produce not only code and review code and integrate code into the release, but also have a release process. So there's actually a lot of effort we spent doing very world-class software engineering practices and release engineering practices. So yeah, there's going to be more news coming out on that. If you're really interested in staying up to date, you can sort of run your daily builds and all that jazz. But what we do focus on is ensuring that every stable release of our software is better than the last. And that's something we're really quite proud of. So in summary, proven stability and performance. So we've very much built Percona Server 5.6 on the stability and performance of Percona Server 5.1 and 5.5. So it's always been market leaders in performance, reliability, and manageability, and this continues in Percona Server 5.6. So very much lead the market in performance, reliability, and manageability in MySQL database servers. Trusted by a lot of people. It's very important that we have trust in our release, and this is why we spend amount of time on release process and software engineering practice. Each release must be better than the last. No software is perfect, but we can try and achieve perfection, right? And so we're very much trusted by people to run their business. After all, database server becomes pretty core amount of a lot of business, so it's important that we have a lot of trust there and produce high-quality software. Big important point, free and open source software. So there's no proprietary, commercial, binary-only add-ons designed for vendor lock-in. None of that. It's all about free and open source software that you can use. People ask, so how do you make money? We make money off consulting and support, right? People want to have someone to ask questions to, get features implemented, get bugs fixed, help them get the most out of the database instance. That's the value here. It's like the actual code itself, binary only, vendor lock-in, we're not interested in it. It's about bringing open source software. We very much recognize backups are important. So in Percona Server 5.6, this is something we hold dear and true to our hearts of making sure that backup works as best as possible. And where we can, we enhance the database server as well to improve the backup solutions. And that's what we've done with better incremental backup. Made small changes to the database server that help dramatically with backup and restore. Drop-in compatible. Very important that Percona Server is always just drop-in compatible. We're very much focused on having it that you can switch back to other things as well. So it's not just a one-way migration, it's that it's on-disk compatible. So naturally, if you switch back to something that isn't Percona Server, you may not get the features of Percona Server, but it's always possible. So we're very keen on it, and we're very focused on it to ensure drop-in compatibility. So it's pretty much run Percona Server, you get Percona Server features. If you want to switch back to something else, you can do that as well. So it's drop-in compatible with on-disk compatibility. We're very focused on making sure we can do that. We're also very focused on making sure that we do not make sort of needless changes to replication formats and stuff like that. So it's just as compatible as replicating MySQL to MySQL, that Percona Server just works. That's very much a focus for us. There is lots of bug fixes and features in Percona Server first. So there's many MySQL 5.6 features that were available in Percona Server 5.5 for a while before MySQL 5.6 came along, as well as Percona Server having bug fixes before the Oracle release. We respond very quickly to customers, and this is something we take to heart as well. Fixing customer problems, really important. So customers come to us with a bug they need fixed. We can work on that and get a release out the door in quite reasonable time. We can also do custom builds where it's like previous release of Percona Server plus a bug fix. This is also something that we're completely tooled up to do, and it's important to us to be able to get releases out quickly that have added fixes for our customers. So there's very much a focus on release early, release often is the mantra, but it's also release high quality software, and that's where we focus. We're very focused on insightful and easy to use diagnostics. So things like table user and index statistics. I use this as an example at times. It's the most widely known. There's other features that are useful inside the Percona Server as well. We don't have 37 different configuration options for this stuff. One is enough. So we have a large consulting and remote DBA organizations, and they're totally not afraid to voice their opinion to development on what they think of various features. So very much when they're talking about going into a database server, find out what's going on, find out what can be improved. A bunch of features that are easy to use, easy to set up, that's where it's important. Customer-focused development. So very much things that go into Percona Server are focused on improving real life for real customers. And that, in a nutshell, is Percona Server 5.6. I also wanted to mention Percona Live London. London 2013, so in November. Apparently we have super saver prices and August 4th, so register quickly now. There's a lot more detailed sessions at Percona Live conferences and MySQL conferences around the world. So Percona regularly holds stuff around the world. I've always found them insightful. You get to hear a lot more in detail. I can touch, on a bunch of things for 5.6 now, but at a live event, it's way easier to go into details and go into stuff that's directly related to ops instead of just a summary. So you want to, overload your brain with MySQL goodness. Conference is a great place to go. But yeah, let's open it up to Q&A.
Hi, Stuart. Can you hear me?
I can. That was an opportunity to get a mouthful of water, and I feel better now.
Oh, good. Thank you so much, and we have so many questions. So everybody, I would like to let you know that if Stuart does not get to yours, he will definitely address it in a follow-up blog post. So with that said, let me start running them by you, Stuart. Okay,
cool.
So the first in Percona Server optimizations, did Oracle implement Percona code or write their own?
So historically, Oracle has implemented their own. There is a There are signs of that they may increasingly take patches from outside. That's actually been something that has been improving recently. But for stuff that came Percona Server first, for various not interesting to get into reasons, they re-implemented things. So yeah, basically they've re-implemented things there. Although they've often had a good eye for maybe how we've gone around some things. Some features they actually implemented in a different way. So it's like version 2 of the patch. So you go, oh wait, I worked out a way to do that in a different way. And that's just the nature of software development. So we're hoping into the future to have a few more things where it is Percona code going in directly. There was some older stuff, before it was Oracle, before it was Sun. I think before it was Sun. Maybe it was in actually Sun. That was Percona code in there. So you can actually see some copyright Percona stuff in the MySQL source tree from some earlier patches. So it's a bit of a mix, but for a bunch of the 5.6 stuff, some of it's all new code from Oracle.
Okay, and I think our most popular question of the day is, when does production Percona Server 5.6 release?
Oh, of course. I knew someone was going to ask that. How did I know that? So I'll address this in two ways. So there's two questions I get asked, one of which is, when will there be a stable release? And I say, there's a stable release now, right? So as I mentioned, we've done a lot of work on software engineering practices, continuous integration, and ensuring each release is of high quality. So if you go and look at any current Percona Server 5.6 release, so up to the latest release candidates, I would say there is of equal or higher quality than any corresponding Oracle release. So they're good releases. We're doing a bunch of testing internally, of course, on Oracle MySQL 5.6 as well, and finding what works and what doesn't there, and filing bugs appropriately. And we found it's fairly solid. And each Percona Server 5.6 release is currently as good as that. What you're probably asking is, when will there be a 5.6 release that we label GA? And the answer to that is soon, right? So we're working on the final stages of stuff here. So it's it's in the very near future. It's in the near future, right? We're just making sure that everything is as solid as possible to wrap it all up. There's one or two more things that we may be able to get in if they prove to be of benefit in performance, and it'll be about ready. That being said, if you grab the latest releases and want to kick the tires on it, I would say go ahead. Not going to be disappointed. So stable, yes. GA, very soon. So hopefully that's an interesting answer that doesn't panic anyone too much. But yep, existing RC releases are fairly solid. Final performance stuff, wait for the final release. But yep, existing stuff's good. And GA soon.
Okay, the next question was InnoDB fake changes picked up by Oracle?
No, it hasn't yet. So if that's something that actually has some demand, we can start to try and work with them to get that in. But that wouldn't happen until a new major MySQL release, so 5.7 or beyond. So any code going into a new Oracle MySQL release is pretty much a 5.7 or 5.7 plus 1. It would be. But yeah, it's currently Percona Server only.
Okay, the next question's a little bit lengthy, so just bear with me. Has Percona developed or found some solutions for migrating production Percona Server 5.5 to a production Percona Server 5.6 without any downtime? Previously, I solved this problem by making a newer version of Percona Server as a replica of an older version of either Percona Server or MySQL database. Then I would point the application servers to the new replica to complete the deployment with trivial downtime. It seems like this approach is not valid given new replication design.
Okay. There's ways of doing it with replication. So to go into the specifics of how to do it with replication, I'll definitely let some of the consultants deal with that rather than me. And I say this here because when you spend all day in production environments, you're way less likely to say something wrong than when you are when you spend all day in development. But there is ways to do it with replication with 5.5 to 5.6. The only real way to migrate from one major version to the next without downtime is doing the replication trick. So, having a new slave off an old master and then doing slave promotion, like you say. While it would be great to do some sort of magic in-place upgrade without downtime, that would be deep voodoo magic, so there's no auto magic stuff on the same server. But doing the slave migration stuff is sort of the best thing we have. And there is ways to do that 5556. What I may do for you there is poke some guys in the ribs really hard and try and get like a blog post on that up if there isn't already. But yeah, I will sure I will be bugged to follow up on that to make sure that something happens. But yeah, you can do the replication trick.
Great. Yeah, there's a couple questions about migration, so I think a blog post would be great. Okay, next question. Can Extra Backup 5.6 be used on a system running Percona Server 5.5?
Yeah. So Extra Backup is a separate product to Percona Server. They work in tandem but have different release dates and everything there. So the latest Extra Backup, which is 2.1, currently 2.1.3. In the coming weeks, we'll probably have 2.1.4, which is another wonderful minor release of Extra Backup. Extra Backup will work against MySQL, Percona Server, and MariaDB, and most versions of all of those. So for Extra Backup 2.1, we say InnoDB plugin for MySQL 5.1 and above. If you're running 5.1 built-in InnoDB or before, you'll need to use Extra Backup 2.0. Just at some point, it's no longer worth supporting ancient history. So we do have Extra Backup 2.1 that runs everything from 5.1 InnoDB plugin onwards. Most of all the features work with most server versions. The notable exceptions are if you're using things like change page tracking. So the improved incremental backup is probably the most noticeable feature that requires server support. And there is support for that in Percona Server. And you can actually go and look at, it's actually various major releases of Percona Server. So you can look at sort of 5.1 and 5.5. I'd look at 5.5 or 5.6 if you really want to use that. But yeah, it is actually also available there. And you can use Extra Backup with those server versions. But very much so, Extra Backup is independent of the database server. So you can use it against MySQL, you can use it against MariaDB, and you can use it against Percona Server. It's all there and tested against the different major server versions.
Okay. Are there any known MySQL lib binding issues or depreciations for 5.6?
Sorry, can you say that again?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Are there any known MySQL lib, is that lib or lib, binding issues or depreciations for 5.6?
Not that I'm aware of. So as far as I'm aware, and from what I saw, although it's been a long time since I looked at the diff, there's no changes in client library, and nothing that should really affect anyone. It's all going to be over-the-wire compatible anyway. The big changes that have come through in MySQL client protocol and client library have been pluggable authentication, which is in 5.5, and changes to do replication things that are new replication features. But that's still backwards compatible, right? So it's only if you want to take advantage of the new replication things you need to do something like that. And that's only if you're involved in the client API part, which is to do with replication, which you're probably not. But if you're just running a normal client app, as far as I'm aware and can remember, there's nothing there that should really affect you. So there's nothing you have to worry about.
Okay, and we have time for one more question, and that is, I didn't notice any mention of the improved NUMA support in Percona Server 5.5. Is this carried over to Oracle and or Percona Server 5.6?
Yeah, so the NUMA support and memory allocation stuff, I am rather sure it's in Percona Server 5.6. I think it was just ported across as part of the whole deal. I can't remember specifically, which probably means it wasn't a hassle at all. Yeah, as far as I'm aware, there has been nothing from Oracle on that ground, and that's still a Percona Server thing. And as far as I'm aware, also in 5.6 and Percona Server 5.6.
Okay, well that wraps up today's webinar. Everybody, thank you so very much for attending. As I said, Stuart will be posting a blog post on MySQL Performance blog to answer a lot of these questions and those that have not been addressed. And we look forward to seeing you at a future webinar. And with that said, Stuart, thank you so much for your time today, and everybody have a lovely day, morning, or evening.
Great. Thank you all. Hope you enjoyed.